Well, from where I came from, there's all my friends were all about the same age, and we all more or less decided amongst ourselves to enlist, and about 200 of us went down on the train to Adelaide, but we enlisted in Renmark, but you had to go to Adelaide to sign up, get your army number, and be put into different units, and that's how it first started off. We're all mainly 19 and a half, and since then I've often thought about, the boys from Vietnam, they sang that song, we were only 19, but 30 years ago we could have sung the same song. When I was younger, I used to go and watch the military out at the showgrounds. They were like training for army, and I got very interested in that. And quite often, although I was only younger, they would let you handle some of the guns. And of course, I finished up as a Bren gunner in Tobruk. And I was a Bren gunner until we come out of Tobruk, and then I got a promotion to Lance Corporal. Well, it's an automatic weapon that fires from a magazine of 28 rounds, and it's got a range of about 600-800 yards, but you could fire a full burst or just a single shot, But we're only allowed one per section, and there's like 3 sections in a platoon, and I was the Bren gunner for number 3 section, and I remained in the same platoon in the same section right throughout. Just very lucky, and lots of didn't come back. Oh yes, and there was only 1 or 2 country boys in my section. The others were from the city, but when you're together for so long, you're more or less all mates. Yeah. When we arrived back in Tobruk, I think it was the 1st of April, which was April Fool's Day and my brother's birthday. And our captain sang out, "Fix bayonets and be prepared to fight." But we were in a raging dust storm that I couldn't even see anybody between you and me, and we just all stood still and wondered what we were going to do. But because it was towards the end of the dust storm that we were placed in cement posts that were originally built by the Italians, and there was like a section or a platoon in each post, and we were in R5, and then the next platoon was R6, R7, and that went right just about around the perimeter, which was about 26 kilometres around, and you didn't remain in the same posts all the time. You got shifted to other posts, or you got shifted to the blue line, which was the next line back in defence, and you spent probably a couple of weeks there, but in between times you still went out through the front patrolling at night, but you got shifted around all the way around Tobruk. Yeah. There was three types. We did the patrol where you were looking for the enemy, and the other patrol was a fighting patrol where there might be 15, 20 fellas armed to the teeth and looking for a German or Italian patrol to shoot up if you saw them. But the other patrols was, if you heard anybody, you used to estimate how many were in the patrol, whether you could attack them or not, But the other patrol was a listening post where different members of the platoon would go out through the barbed wire entanglements, and we'd sit around like they called it a sanger, which was like a semicircle of rocks up about 2 feet high, and you'd sit there for a couple of hours, and then someone would come and replace you. But I can remember I was only my Bren gunner, but the fellow I was with was a platoon sergeant, and he was from the same town as me, and we were sitting there pitch dark, and all of a sudden we both got a tap on the shoulder, and we spun around quick, and there's 2 Gurkha soldiers, and they said, "Australiana soldier, very good." And we didn't even hear them, you know. And they withdrew their knives, and apparently if a Gurkha withdraws his knife, he's got to do a cut on his arm or his hand, and just to signify that the knife has been withdrawn. And eventually they left us and invited us, if we ever get back to their unit, they invited us for a cup of tea, which we eventually did, but the cup of tea was only about a tablespoonful in a little tiny cup, and very sweet with sugar and stuff, but it was very good, and you got to meet them. You know, some could speak really good English and others who had to try and understand what they were saying, but it was wonderful to know them. One of our actions, our battalion was ordered into action when the Germans broke through the outside salient, and we were told that we'd be supported by 6 British tanks on our left flank. Well, we moved in about, I think it was about 4:45 in the afternoon, and we noticed these tanks out about 1,000 yards out on our left flank, and when they turned, they had swastikas on them. They didn't have British flags. And of course we were in a sort of a low dip in the ground, and the first thing you do is hit the ground, and my number 2 on the gun, he used to carry the box of magazines. He used to have about 12 magazines in the box. He said to me, I think I'll stand these up and for protection, you know. And we were getting fired on by machine guns mainly, and mortars. And he no sooner did it, and we got a burst of fire, and a bullet went through the box of magazines and through his throat and killed him instantly. And the long story about it was that I was able to reach over and take his wallet, and because when we came back from the Middle East after El Alamein, we only had 15 days leave, and I got married. And then we returned to the unit, and I never had a chance to contact anybody and return the wallet. But 50 years later, I got a phone call from a gentleman in Adelaide. He was a police sergeant, and he asked me if I was a member of the 2nd 48th Battalion, and I said, yeah. He said, you wouldn't have known my brother. And I said, well, what was his name? And he said, Alan Porter. I said, yes, he was my number 2 on the gun. And I said, if you're ever in Renmark, I've got something I'd like to present you with. And he turned up about 2 or 3 weeks later with his 2 sisters, and I presented him with a wallet, and he wouldn't open the wallet in front of me. He said, no, take it home and do it. Yeah, it was a lovely surprise for him, but not a really nice surprise, but he was only about 3 years old when this happened, you see, and of course he didn't know anything about his son or his brother. Yes, so that was one of the worst things, you know, losing your best mate, plus others, you know, but he was more with me than anyone, you know. Well, it was so long, you know, 50 years, at least 50 years, because I never opened it. It was still wrapped in, I had it wrapped in a sort of soft tissue to protect it, and it was left in the drawer of my cupboard, and I never looked at it, and I thought one day perhaps I'll be able to contact somebody, and eventually the older brother contacted me, which was good. I thought, wonderful. And he always rings me on the 1st of May every year, because that was the day his brother was killed. Just a sort of a reminder, you know, but if he doesn't ring me, I always ring him, but that's the usual thing. The Germans bombed us every day. I reckon that we were bombed more than even some of the cities in England, you know, and not only just 1 or 2 planes, probably 20, 30 flying over all the time. And plus that, they had a long-range gun about 20 miles out from the perimeter that fired about a 210mm shell, which sometimes exploded and sometimes it didn't, but it used to go over and you could see it. And it used to make a noise like a like a motorbike, you know. When it hit the ground point on, it seemed to roll forward. You know, it might go for several hundred yards before it stopped and didn't explode. But it was very frightening. But yes, fortunately they didn't fire it too often, I suppose, because of the expense of firing it. But we were in several fighting patrols that we lost several of the men in the platoon. But I was very lucky that I came out unscathed, you know. We went in on the 23rd of October, and we advanced about 2,000 yards. It was dark. It was about 10:20 at night, and we had a Bofors anti-aircraft gun firing. It wasn't firing like up into the air. It was firing a straight shot, which guided us in our directions. And besides that, we had white tapes on the ground where the engineers had found German mines, or our mines, so that we were protected to get through there. And after the second day, we were dug in, and we were relieved. And on the night of the 26th of October, we were sent in again to attack. Our company attacked Trig 29, which is one of the German fortifications, and we attacked about 11 o'clock at night, and we were being shelled and mortared all the way in. It was real dark though, but our platoon attacked the hill. It was only a small hill, and our platoon, I was only a section leader. I was a Lance Sergeant in charge of number 3 section, and the other 2 sections were like, we were in that 1 and 2 were in front of me, and then I was back about 20, 30 yards behind, and we attacked the hill, and we captured it, but we lost, out of the 22 of us, there was only 5 of us come out. And one of those that was killed was Perce Grapwick, the VC winner, and he was in number 2 section. And the 5 of us, well, we eventually wrote the citation that got him his VC, but you couldn't just write a story and hand it to the company commander. It had to go back to battalion and then on to brigade and on to division, and eventually we were notified that he was granted the VC. But he was much older than us. We were all in our 20s, and he was more like 40 odd. He was an old miner from Western Australia. Yeah, very nice fellow, but he didn't believe in carrying magazines for the Bren gun. He carried grenades in his pocket, and that's how he put out 2 German machine gun posts where they fired little semi-automatic rifles or guns, and yes, but he was killed in the third little dugout. I got promoted to Lance Sergeant after El Alamein, and then because our platoon was only about 5 left, they promoted me to Sergeant. So I was a Sergeant when we got back from Australia, and we did training up in the Atherton Tablelands, and then eventually finished up in Port Moresby, and from Moresby we did the landing at Lae, and the good thing about the landing at Lae was there was no Japanese on the beach, so we had an easy landing. But out to sea, I can always remember there was at least 6 Japanese 2-engine bombers coming in to bomb us, and they never made it. There was about 20 Lightning bombers, Lightning fighters from the American Air Force that shot them all down. Because if they had a bomb, once we left the beach, there was kunai grass about 10 feet high, you know, and if that had caught alight, well, we would have been in big trouble. Yeah. And I knew him very well before the war. He was a bit of a loner. He was a fruit picker at Berry, which is only 12 miles from Renmark, but he was a bit of a boxer, and quite often at Renmark, about every 6 weeks, there'd be a boxing competition at Renmark, and he always participated in that. But yeah, he's a nice fella, tough. But so we finished up, our battalion finished up with 4 VC winners, with